Welcome to China EVs and More, where my co-host Lei Xing and I will go over the week's most important and interesting news coming out of the global EV, AV, and mobility sectors. What Lei and I discuss today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners and viewers, welcome back. Help us spread the word about this podcast to others. And of course, tune in again next week. My name is Tu Li. I'm the managing director at NIO Auto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sectors. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course, I encourage you all to.
AKA OBX, Autobanks. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode 249. I was going through the recording and I said 247 last episode, which should have been 248. So this is 249. So I was away earlier this week, spending time with my wife because my daughter is still in France right now. Much needed time to kind of be free. You know how it is to be away from the kids. But I do know the May sales numbers is something that we can talk about. There's a major beef between Li Auto and NIO.
I think it's real too. I don't think it's manufactured, and I think it's
one of those things.
Serious.
I mean,
it's agenda.
Some news on the overseas front. Chery could be producing in Nissan's Sunderland plant in the UK. I think that's one of the major news that came out outside of China.
I wanted to congratulate the UK team for that, because you and I know some of the UK folks in China that are trying to attract foreign direct investment into the UK from China. And recently I had met up with my friend John Edwards, who was leading that commercial team. Remember, we had spoken with him?
Yep.
A while back. So he moved back to London, and now he is doing foreign direct investment, not just for China anymore, but I know his team was a little bit involved with that discussion and negotiation with Chery and Nissan. So
and
congratulations to them.
Yes. This comes after about a half year after Chery announced with Nissan on their other plant in South Africa.
And they're looking at building in Barcelona through a Spanish brand as well.
So the fine print is that one was confirmed, but this one is a non-binding MOU, which means they're studying. It's not finally confirmed yet, but we can pretty much chalk it up as a check mark in what will become the first Chinese automaker producing in UK. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yep.
And what's important, Lei, is that Chery, through its brands, JQ, Omada, Chery brand, and there's one other that now control about 7% of the, they have about 7% of the market in the UK. So the UK is becoming an even more important market for them. So to build domestically would likely enhance that market share even further.
Yeah. And then Chery, remember, they launched this Freelander. They brought back the Freelander brand, which is basically the Land Rover using Chery's platform. And now Tata, the parent company of JLR, they're probably trying to utilize Chery platform.
Did you see my shirt, by the way, Lei?
Fight to the first. Yeah, they talked about the Ferrari Luce. I think the Faraday F91 looked better than the Luce, right?
Well, so I had a nice discussion with Sam Livingstone, our good friend Sam, but yeah, Chery is going to be. It is. So you're not a fan?
No, I am a fan. And one more news on Chery. They sold 240,000 vehicles in May. 180,000 of those were exported.
Well,
so yeah, they did 240,000. 180,000.
I think you said 140. I think you said 140,000.
No, it's 240,000.
Okay, I could be wrong. We'll check the video, but
which is 75% exported in the month of May.
So this will tell you what you need to know about Chery. They will export more vehicles this year than they'll sell domestically. So domestically in China is what I'm saying. But did want to ask you, Lei, how do you feel about that? Is that concerning? Is that a good thing? Because it seems like they're losing the battle at home, but they're progressing quite well outside of China.
It's a double-edged sword. We talked about in the last episode, BYD. If you look at the May sales, the big bucket at the top are these groups, BYD, SAIC Motor, Geely, Chery, and Chang'an. All of their sales reported, including ICVs, at least a third are exported. BYD was close to 50%. Chery was at 75%, right? The 180 versus 240.
That's a monster number. It actually does concern me.
Mind-boggling number.
Do they become a...
No, I don't think they're... No, but yeah, it's hard to compare, but I don't think it's an Iowa situation.
Let's monitor
Not
it,
yet.
but 75%, 25% domestic sales of your mix is not great. It is not great.
60,000 sold in the domestic market versus 180,000. No matter how you look at it, it's kind of jarring, right?
It is jarring. And one risk that they're trying to mitigate is that if more tariffs, if more protectionism happens, this really, really exposes them. And remember when they IPO'd last year in Hong Kong, they said that they were going to leave the Russia market. And that was a big hole. 25% of their sales went to Russia. So I don't know what their progress. They don't seem to be really making announcements about if they're continuing to ship into Russia. But we do know that there are Chinese brands that are continuing to ship into Russia to fill that void. Mostly ICE vehicles from brands that you and I don't really pay that much attention to. But that is kind of the risk that Chery has, because if the domestic sales continue to weaken, they're going to be solely reliant on those factories in UK, in Spain, in South Africa for growth, which means there's a lot of risk involved. So
it just feels like Chery, the strategic direction of Chery, based on all of the news that we mentioned at the top of the show, is they're leaning aggressively toward outside of China. That's for sure. And based on the last few auto shows, Beijing and Shanghai, when they invite 3,000, 5,000 media partners, dealership, and they invite them on a whole train to travel to China, there's nobody else that does that. So
seems to be working.
They're becoming international.
And
really,
you're starting to see the Geelys, the LeapMotors, and the Cherys take some headlines from the BYDs, because prior to, say, 12 months ago, 14 months ago, 18 months ago, BYD was the dominant brand that was in most Western media outlets. Now you're starting to see more news about LeapMotor, and Stellantis is really, really creating tailwinds for LeapMotor to enter foreign markets, and not just Europe. They're helping them in other regions of the world as well.
BYD was at passenger vehicles 376,000. It's a good bump from April numbers, and I'm sure with the recent announcements, they should get into the 400,000s as the year goes along. But how much of those are exported? It's at least 50% from what we're seeing.
You and I kind of talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but let me be clear one more time. Toyota was at over 11 million units last year. Globally, they have a global manufacturing footprint. And of the top 10 automakers, BYD and Geely fit into that top 10. So now we have Chinese global automakers, quote unquote, with BYD likely surpassing Ford permanently at some future point in time, 12, 18, 24 months from a sales standpoint. But to get from 4.6 in 2025 to 11, 12, 13 million units, BYD understands how tough it is. In my opinion, if they even get close to 8, 9 million units, that 4.6 needs to go up. Let's just say this. They need 60% of their sales, at least 60, 65% of their sales to be coming from China, which seems like it's going to be harder and harder and harder to do that. Now, I know Stella Li and Wang Chuanfu had said we want a 50-50 split, but it's going to be easier to get to the double-digit millions of units with a strong base coming out of China, in my opinion.
Yeah. And then we have the second bucket. I'm looking at these rankings. Tesla has been, if you look at this whole long line of monthly sales, Tesla probably is the only one that has been consistent. There are up and downs, but they're still at 80,000, 90,000 out of Giga Shanghai. They're never too much above or too much below. They're always there.
Lei, I'm going to push back on that, because Mercedes has been very consistent over the last 12 months. Their sales has shrank consecutively for the last 12 months in China. So they've also been very consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of perspective, right? And then LeapMotor passing 80,000 for the first time. At some point this year, they're going to join the 100,000 club. You can bet on that because they have 1.05 million sales target for this year. And they have these vehicles in place and they're relaunching the C series. And then the third bucket is a bunch of these stacked in the 30,000 range. And guess who has the most momentum of those? Oh, and Xiaomi.
So
definitely not Li Auto. I can tell you
let's
that.
Let's give a golf clap to NIO. Congratulations. They're going to ship 120,000 ES8s very soon. So that's about 10,000 a month, which 3 years ago, you and I were wondering, where's that consistency going to come from?
Yeah.
It's going to come from a higher value, lower priced ES8. And then the ES9 has been out because I want to dovetail that into what you just said about Li Auto. The ES9 has been out about a month and they're going to be shipping about 10,000 units very, very soon. So can you tell us a little bit more about this dispute between Li Auto and NIO, Lei, especially with the ES9 and the L9 Levis?
Yeah, there was this video put out by Li Auto of the L9 Levis and the ES9 going through this bumpy test of the suspension. Because these two models, one of the biggest selling points, both of these models are about their ride handling and going through rough roads surfaces. So this video showed Li L9 very stable, whereas the ES9 was shaking quite a bit. And the NIO people, they kind of went on Weibo and disputed the video, saying, it wasn't set at the right setting. It was on standard. And then the video went offline. And this is not the first time that Li Auto has got into controversy. When they launched the i8 last July, they had this video of the i8 being impacted with a truck. And that was controversial and was kind of a bad publicity for Li Auto. Negative press. And now they run into it again at the most inopportune times when ES8 is flying out of the lots, when ES9 is flying out of the lots. We don't know how the L9 is going to do, but I'm not sure they're going to get to 10,000 units as fast as the ES9 is going to.
The other thing is that Li Bin is a bit of a darling, social media darling in China. He's all over the place and he's consistently live streaming and on social media, and he's the one on stage announcing new products and he's engaging customers and fans.
I think the beef started when he said during the ES9 launch event that they have this 48-volt architecture for the chassis. And he said it's better than the 800-volt or the 400 architecture. So indirectly pointing at Li Auto. So hence, I think Li Auto came back with this video and then it backfired. Yeah, that's how it stands currently, but we love these companies, right? That just shows you the other side of the competitive landscape.
There's a few different things going on. It's the ultra competitiveness between the brands, and we're also seeing pressure seemingly starting to get to Li Auto a little bit because they have had consistent negative press about things. The vehicles that they've launched haven't been as well received as some of their competitors. And we see Brian Gu all over the place in Europe over the last 4 or 6 weeks. Did you see that post on LinkedIn where he's showing that he's talking to Tom McKenzie, he's talking to this person, he's talking to that person? He's doing a tour in Europe. And remember, we were told that Brian's going to be spending a lot more time in Europe to push the XPeng brand, create awareness and excitement. So I feel like Li Auto is not getting that type of love from their CEO and from its products. And so maybe they're a little bit jealous.
Li Xiang is sometimes low-key. Sometimes he blurts out this Weibos, right? Dongfeng Nissan, they had a beef with the Dongfeng Nissan NX8 with the Li Auto i6 and L6. And the other part of the reason is that they're not yet as international. They're planning to be. This is a big year. So they're not out there facing the media. And they don't have someone like a Brian Gu, who's an investor guy, right? Who's a money finance guy. So he knows how to build it. So they don't have that kind of the rhythm yet. So basically what's happening is they're facing complete domestic pressure headwind while they're trying to be export oriented starting this year, heading into Europe.
Let us assure, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming that you might have a similar feeling about this. Let me assure you that the products aren't lacking. It's not because these products aren't very good. The products are good. You and I just drove one for 2 days, over 1,200 kilometers. No issues, no challenges. We were actually pretty delighted with the charging experience and the simplicity, and not in a Scandinavian, not enough going on, but the simplicity of the front console. It was very intuitive, and so it's not a problem issue. It is just kind of a marketing and media relations issue at this point in time in the China market. And because they can't balance that out with any news outside of China, I think it's so focused and concentrated that that's why it comes off so negative sometimes.
Yeah, it looks like in recent, about a year or so, Li Auto has been very controversy.
Almost conspiratorial.
Yeah,
And
that
for
does not
sure,
help
Li
with the narrative.
Xiang,
Yeah.
for sure, Li Xiang is the least social media friendly between even He Xiaopeng and Li Ben. And to your point, we're seeing that them not being international yet is a constraint for them.
Li Bin is at a CBA finals game with Xiaomi right at this moment, I think. And that must mean the ES9 is selling well, because he said, if the orders are good, I'm going to watch a CBA finals, which the Shanghai team is one of the teams in the finals, which is the home team.
So Yao the entire CBA, doesn't he? He owns the Shanghai Sharks and the CBA?
Something like that.
Because I know Xiaomi, Yao is trying to work more closely with the NBA. So
Xiaomi, they put out 30,000, but I'm thinking it's probably over 35,000. They never give a middle ground number. It's always 30,000, 40,000, but I'm sure it's much higher. And then the rest of the bucket is the ones that are still below 30,000. So we're seeing the market. Remember a few years ago, we said 10,000 is a minimum, is a threshold you must cross. Now we have a bunch of these 30,000s. And at a certain point, you have to go up or go out. Yeah.
Well, and then this is where it gets a little bit cloudy. We have the HIMA brands, the Stellatos, the Maestros, the Aitos.
So the HIMA, it's still primarily, they reported 46,000 units, but a lot of that are still driven by the Aito at this point. So like Aito is like 34.
The Stellato, the flagship vehicle, that is a higher end vehicle. I want to say it's 80,000 US. It's Rolls-Royce-esque. And so you're not going to see that as a high volume car. It's more of a luxury cruiser, even more so than a
EQS SUV. Well, so speaking of Mercedes, they just started pre-sale of the 5-seater GLC SUV at 349,000. I'm looking at my WeChat moments, and people are actually praising this because it's long wheelbase, it's got the Momenta, and when it actually launches, we're probably going to see this model inching closer to a starting price of 300,000.
You had mentioned that it's using Momenta. It's also using ByteDance Doubao as its LLM. So we're seeing now more non-automotive tech companies get involved. ByteDance is obviously the TikTok in Douyin, which is the Chinese version, or let's just say that TikTok is the US version of Douyin, which is a very popular social media app. And TikTok is now controlled by Oracle in the US. So
something like that, yeah.
You know, I still question that whole 1 meter long hyper screen, but the CLTC range is supposed to be around 400 miles, which is solid, man. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
But again, to your point, I think 350 for a midsize SUV crossover is a little bit high, especially when you can get an ES8 with no battery for around the same price.
I was just about to say the ES9 with the BAAS mode starts at under 400,000 RMB. And the Mercedes, much smaller vehicle, GLC, the starting price point is 350,000 RMB.
Much smaller, even after they extended the wheelbase.
So and it looks like also based on the GX, what Xiaopeng shared on the earnings, that the GX, like 80% of the orders so far are for the top line, Ultra, like 300,000 RMB range. So that shows you how much of an uphill battle the Mercedes and the other foreign premiums, the 4-letter Audi, this E7X has to compete.
Yeah. And So let me see. What else did I want to talk
And
about?
then
So really quickly, the Mercedes-Benz has its own electric platform called the MB.EA. Mercedes-Benz has its own operating system, MB.OS. And I don't know if MBOS is actually running on top of anything, but I'll try to figure that out. The other thing that I think is really important is that the person, I forget his name, who was heading up the Sunnyvale Technical Center for Mercedes-Benz, he left. It was a German guy. I forget his name, but I've spoken with him a few times. He did leave the Sunnyvale office in Mercedes-Benz, so I'm not sure what he's going to be doing next, but I know he was driving a lot of that push into high tech and technology. Now, one of the things that I also heard at that media conference was that, and this was a little bit surprising to me, was BMW and Mercedes was really driving a lot of the desire to get media into the vehicles. But now that I've heard more about this GLC, because they want to be able to, via the Momenta intelligent driving system, to be parking spot to parking spot in China before the end of the year. So effectively, they want to have FSD capabilities by the end of this year.
So I tweeted recently that this summer is going to be epic because all of these solutions, whether Momenta, Horizon Robotics, they're coming out. XPeng, the updated VLA in the summer, He Xiaofeng said they want to achieve level as good as FSD. He made a bet, right, of opening up a canteen in their Silicon Valley office, like some kind of a bet. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But my only experience with FSD, it's the crown jewel. I know it might sound like a stand, but when
You
you
are
go
a
on,
stand now, man. I
I
might sound like a stand.
apologize, but it's just so good. Like when you go on these long trips, 600 miles. I came back yesterday, 12 hours. Me and my wife, we were in a car for 4.5 hours driving over 200 miles. And the whole trip, the fatigueness was probably at least a half, if not more, than a normal trip when you drive yourself. That's how good it is.
Well, you really need to get out because you're stiff more than anything else.
I had not the range anxiety, the butt anxiety because my butt hurts.
The butt soreness.
Yeah, soreness. So, and it routes you to the supercharging station, parks in the spot, you just plug it in. Once it's done, you plug it out, press the self-driving, and it continues. Yeah. So
yeah, well, but I also think it's important, Lei, and I think you would agree with me saying this, of course, is that you're still supervising. You're still paying attention. It's not like you're sleeping in the driver's seat.
No. But it's just so good after you drive it every day and then you go these long trips. The value of it. Yeah.
But this is where you can't trust your instincts because you trust it so much and you still need to be diligent with paying attention, but just in case.
At the same time, the other side is that you appreciate its limitations because it does have a lot of limitations. So on the way over,
where good enough is not good enough. Good enough is not good enough.
I accidentally went through a route where you needed to take a ferry boat. So that was kind of interesting. And I had to take over twice because of this ferry boat thing.
And that's what's considered an edge case. So
corner cases. So updated numbers. I'm looking at this. I don't know whether you've seen this. The Canadian Global Fairs reported 2,910 EVs from China shipped from March 1st to August 31st. So remember the 49,000, there was a stipulation that within a 6-month period, only half of it. So I think the remaining quota is 21,590. So they've shipped 2,910 Chinese EVs into Canada already. There were some Lotuses. There were some other brands. I think Chery may be in it as well. Probably a lot of Teslas.
A lot of Teslas.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So I was talking to a few Canadian journalists, and they said it's a lot of Teslas. Or Carney said it's a lot of Teslas. I would assume
Teslas account for quite a lot of those.
Basically, Tesla doesn't need to homologate. They were already shipping, and I think they stopped shipping or slowed down shipping from Shanghai because of the 100% tariff. But
yeah, they have probably the easiest path into Canada because they were already there before. The Shanghai built.
And again, 20,000 units, 30,000 units from a major automaker like BYD, it's effectively a rounding error, but it's more important for the Chinese automakers because it'll be their first time in the Canadian market. Tesla you see Teslas all over the place in Canada already. So it's a continuation of something they had paused as opposed to a new entry into a new market with new customers.
Yeah.
And I would say, Lei, that gives Tesla the advantage for the next couple of years, not just this year.
Yeah, but I mean, the numbers are minimal, 49,000 units.
Yeah. I'm sure Carney's team is fast and furious trying to negotiate with the BYDs, the Geelys, the Cherys, the LeapMotors to figure out who's going to be the first to write a check. And looking at the unions, looking at the tier ones to figure out what makes the most sense from, is it shipping kits? Is it full production? If it's full production, what's the requirement on the supply base? Because even if you do final assembly in production in Canada, but you're shipping most of the parts from China, is that what the Canadians want? Or is it the entire supply chain or most of it needs to come to Canada? And because the USMCA is still up in the air, are they looking at the United States as a free market that they can ship from? Because there's a lot of Chinese suppliers in the United States already building parts for assembly plants.
So I believe the official negotiations start on July 1st for the USMCA, and part of the discussions is thinking of something of a content. How much content you have to get free trade. So a lot of things are on the table. The
Trump administration doesn't want to keep the free trade agreement between the three countries. I just feel like Trump wants to do bilateral agreements between the two countries. I don't know.
But what I was saying is the Chinese EVs are encircling America. When does that bubble burst, right? When they actually come in.
The pressure is continuing to build. Let's say that. People are still getting educated on what's going on, and I'm doing the best I can, man. I'm doing the best I can. That's all I have.
Same here.
Unless you have anything else.
No, I just saw this number of Honda. They sold, for the second consecutive month, they had major sales growth down in China. So in the first 5 months, they only sold 170,000. At the prime, Honda sold over 1.6 million vehicles. I think that was 2020, actually. And this year, they might sell around 400,000, 6 years. It's very jarring. Remember, Honda is the one that recently put out a re-strategy of how they want to look at the Chinese market. And there was that line saying that they would utilize Chinese companies' tech underpinning their future architectures. I think a bit slow on that decision, but yeah, it's crazy.
I think we can definitively say that that's the only path forward in China for most legacy automakers. The only path forward. Let me stress that for a third time. The only path forward for most legacy automakers, because I don't think they are able to speed up their development process. I don't think they have the expertise that's needed. I don't think they understand the market as well as the Chinese do. And aside from that, Lei, there was an article in Autoblog that said that Sterling Anderson and GM were looking at the Hummer, which was developed in less than 24 months, to be the new way forward for General Motors. Now, I'm going to be going to that big Hummer that they developed in 2021 that is now this 9,000 pound thing. They developed it in 20 months, I think, and they want to use that as the template for moving forward on product development. I'm going to San Francisco because Tuesday morning, the 9th, there's a media event with Sterling Anderson. I don't know why it's in San Francisco because they have an office in Mountain View, but it is what it is. Either way, I'm going to be on the left coast for a couple of days, and I was going to stay for a few days, Lei, to meet with them, but I'm like, I've been gone for so long.
Yeah.
I need to not be gone. So I'm taking the red eye on the 9th, and it's going to suck. Anyways, there's some comments. GM from Grand Junction, Colorado. Okay. That's from Seymour Facts. Toyota in trouble in Australia. Its reliability, reputation in trouble in the United States. Feel like it ebbs and flows. Toyota has been pretty consistent. And I know that they're also making bets on the innovation and venture capital side for some things. So I think Toyota's philosophy of slow and steady is actually paying off for them. They know the competition is coming, but I think that they're such a big, big player the biggest player in one of the most important sectors in the world that their influence in front of the camera and behind the scenes should not be underestimated. This is where I'm not. So he has question mark, or he or she has question mark, 5-minute to 9-minute and 9-minute charging from China. Will this shorten the battery life?
Well, BYD has openly refuted that this shortens battery life.
I think CATL.
So at this point, we don't know. We'll have to see once these flash charging models hit the market and big volumes and kind of see how it goes. But at this point, I think if you ask the OEMs themselves, they would say no, that they've tested this. But the other way to look at this, anytime you have fast charging, super fast charging, it affects the battery performance. There's no doubt about that, right? Over a long period of time. That's just the way chemistry or science works. I mean, there's no way you can have 100% capacity battery 3, 4, 5 years after using it.
SJJ005. Since the Yao Ming advertisement, the weekly order for NIO has surpassed Huawei and Tesla. I wouldn't doubt that. I think Yao Ming is a national hero.
But I think Xiaomi is definitely a plus in boosting sales, but I don't think it started at Xiaomi. I think it started at just the right product definition, the launching rhythm, building on the experience, on the platform architecture, and just bang for the buck for that type of sized vehicles.
I'm curious to see how much Yao Ming stays engaged after this initial set of months, because if he's to continue to be involved, the ES9 needs to evolve as well, with new features, new types of things that will attract buyers. Because again, this is a large vehicle, so it's not going to be practical for every buyer, although, the price point seems really, really, really competitive. Scott Wilson 2859. In the Chinese vehicles with a built-in fridge, can you have the fridge run even when the car is off? It would be nice to keep it working overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep.
Yes. So as a matter of fact, the N60, the sub 120,000 RMB Ion N60, in the center armrest below, there's a fridge. So every time I get into the vehicle, I check there's a bottle of water in there. After a night, it's cold. So that means it works.
I'll text a few people to confirm, and Lei, you can also reach out to a couple of the brands.
Yeah, that's not.
I think it barely uses any battery, to be frank.
Yeah.
Seymour Fact 4333. I think the U.S. is pumping its tiny 4% market as being important. U.S. market is not that important. Even Legacy Auto Corp know this. So 4% market. I'm not sure what the 4% means, but if you're still on Seymour Fact, maybe you can let us know. If not, maybe you can make a comment after this show is posted on YouTube, after we edit it and stuff. Anyways, everyone, I thought this was going to be a pretty short episode, but you and I always have a lot to say. So have a good weekend, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We will talk with you all later.
Bye-bye.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Lei and I thank you for tuning in. My name is Tu Li, and you can find me on Twitter at Sino Auto Insight. That's SinoAutoInsight. You can find Lei on Twitter at Lei Xing 77. That's LEIXING 77. If you wouldn't mind rating and or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you grab your podcast from, we'd appreciate that as well. Even better, if you enjoy this show, please tell your friends about it. Please join us again next week as we track down all the latest news on China, EVs, and more.